r/AskReddit by Robotainment. Serious Americans, would you be in support of putting a law in place that government officials, such as senators and the president, go without pay during shutdowns like this, while other federal employees do? Why, or why not? I would prefer that Congress can't leave the Capitol until a budget is passed. I think that could turn into a game of big bank little bank. The wealthiest politicians could just wait out those with less money in order to get their way. Apparently this is actually the exact reason that they still get paid during a shutdown, so the rich politicians can't hold the non-rich ones hostage over certain issues, or so I have heard. Maybe that's wrong. Edit. It's been pointed out that almost everyone in Congress is rich enough that a couple months without pay would have practically no impact at all. The rule I mentioned seems outdated nowadays. This is a terrible idea. For one thing, most of them would not care. My senators are worth millions of dollars. They don't even notice their salary. For another thing, some congresspeople do really depend on their salary. This is their only source of income. See the problem here? If we cut off their pay, then the rich congressmen have a weapon to use against the poorer congressmen. There would be more government shutdowns and threats of shutdowns, and vote with me or lose your paycheck would become a viable, common tactic for the wealthier members of Congress. A better idea would be to just stop voting for idiots. Or, more applicable to this audience, fucking vote. Edit. Thank you for the gold and silver and the great discussions. This shutdown is extremely frustrating for everyone, and there are no easy answers. But the more we talk about potential solutions, the more likely we are to find some that work. I came into this thread thinking, oh great, another agree-a-thon where Opera tends to try and start debate over something on which 99.99% of Reddit already sides with him. But your comment totally blindsided me. I never considered this angle for a moment. Well said. I'd rather change the law so that not passing the budget defaulted to a continuing resolution. There is no reason a shutdown should happen. I kind of like how our Canadian and UK friends handle this. If you don't pass a budget in time, an election is triggered. No, but I'm also against allowing critical federal employees to go without pay. I think if they're required to work, we should be required to pay them. Regarding the why not of politicians, we're finally starting to get some who aren't coming from wealth. I'd hate for those people to get pushed out because they can't afford to be politicians. I want to see more representation of working and middle class people in our government. Obligatory update. Thanks for the silver kind internet stranger. Agreed completely on this. If they're being forced to work, they need to be paid. Can you imagine working any other job where they forced you in and didn't pay you? There would be an uproar. The whole reason they don't already is because then the richer congressmen would use it against the poorer ones. Terrible idea. Yeah, seriously. If you're putting pressure on your politicians to have to choose between do the right thing and get evicted from your house, it's not really a fair government. The rich and powerful senators who have been in power for decades won't notice the paychecks missing. It will be the first-term representatives who are actually trying to make a difference that will get hurt the most. In Canada, if a situation like this happens, rather than a shutdown, an election is triggered. If the government can't do their job, govern, then everyone gets removed and we vote new people into office. This way, the government will avoid these situations at all costs. A better solution would be to cancel recess for everybody involved. Edit. Just to clarify, removing recess means that the Senate cannot adjourn. Or better yet, prevent the Speaker of the Majority Leader from being the sole person who can call a vote. Mitch McConnell has prevented the Senate from voting on a bill that the Senate approved 100-0. No one person should have this power. At face value I would think it's a good idea, but I saw someone pointed out a rather logical reason why it won't. Basically the wealthier representatives could wait out the poorer ones. Worse yet, the representatives whose lobbyists have the bigger pockets can keep them afloat. Functionally, you would need an amendment rather than just a law. Congressional members aren't paid from annual appropriations and are paid through a salary not based on hours worked, but as their status as members. More importantly, members of Congress are constitutional officers. The president and life-tenured federal judges is also a constitutional officer and also cannot be prevented from carrying out their duties, except as allowed in the Constitution. As such, they're all constitutionally entitled to pay. Article 1, Section 6 of the Constitution. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services, to be ascertained by law, and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. Point 270H Amendment. No law, varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives, shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. It also functionally won't do much besides perhaps damage the one or two financially untenable younger members AOC, for example. The shutdown and pay being withheld impact only those employees that need that money imminently, which is not the vast majority of Congress and certainly not the president. So that amendment would functionally not be much more than a feel-good effort. This simple argument against it is that newer or less corrupt congressmen would be the only ones to suffer. If you're making $500K selling your soul to a big corporation, then your check for being a part of Congress is an afterthought. Meanwhile, freshman senators who realistically spent nearly all of their money on campaigning to get into Congress and change a broken system will be the only ones to suffer. So this could just help the spread of corruption against high-ranking government members. Although why should they be exempt from suffering the way SAB workers or prison workers do? I feel that instead of stopping anyone from getting paid, if a budget isn't agreed upon, then we have an emergency 3 months airbag where we pay federal workers for those 3 months and essentially use the previous budget. If those 3 months go by and still no movement is made, then there should be repercussions for Congress and the presidency. Something along the lines of an immediate replacement of all leading members of Congress and a removal of the current president. This later one is dangerous, because there are times that Congress would be willing to kill itself to kick a sitting president out of power, such as Republicans during the Obama administration, and I suspect Democrats during the Trump administration. Additionally, Congress should be forced into a minimum of 8-hour workdays with the president sitting in on the meeting trying to find a compromise. There should be no vacations, time off, or excuses with the exception of terminal illness. If a member of Congress fails to show up, they would effectively be removed from Congress, and if the sitting president or vice president is not there, then their power to veto a budget will be removed, and it would only take both houses to confirm a budget. I personally like the Canadian system. If their legislature ever fails to pass a budget, they failed at their primary responsibility of running the government. Failing to pass a budget is treated as a failure of confidence, and a general election is triggered whereby every parliamentarian must face their voters and justify why they should have a job, and #X200B. Not saying that would force all US legislators to act, but it would probably incentivize enough to avoid stupid shit like this latest shutdown. Canada also keeps paying their workers during a shutdown. Government stops, it's just another day at the office, because they keep getting paid. The next budget isn't going to phase out essential services, so there really is no reason to not keep paying people. I don't think the whole shutdown concept should even exist. Budgets for projects with limited lifetimes should end, but operating budgets for ongoing departments and agencies should run along as is until changed. There should never be a budget/no budget conflict. It should be about how much we spend, or don't spend on each individual thing. I would not support it. If that were in place, richer government officials could literally use this as a pressure technique all the time, to force poorer government officials to bend to their will in order to end a shutdown. I don't think money should have as much influence on our politicians as it currently does. But taking away a government official's base salary isn't the way to do it. The president should have to vacate the White House during a shutdown and be sequestered in a Motel 6 with Congress until everything is solved. Everyone has to share beds. With bed bugs. I support a law that ends shutdowns by continuing funding at previous levels if no new budget is passed. I would support it. I don't think it would have much effect. Most senators, certainly this president, aren't working check to check. They're far more beholden to their donors that are behind their agenda. According to here, BigThink.com linked the median net worth of a senator is $3.2 million and the median net worth of a House representative is $900K. They won't feel the effects at all. Current POTUS isn't receiving a paycheck since his inauguration. Good lord, all you did was state a fact without showing any support or opposition to him, and people downvote you. Fuck Reddit. How about remove all government paid travel and remove all pay/benefits? Insane that the Secret Service protecting these officials are not being paid as they fly around on taxpayers' expense. Insane Homeland Security and other law enforcement personnel are not being paid while having to work. That's the craziest part. I just read that different agencies have ordered people back to work without pay. Honestly, that should be illegal itself. At least some are getting back pay, but not many can actually afford to work this long without pay like this. Remove government travel. Remove the politicians' security detail. Remove everything. Then let's see how long they hold out, because they aren't getting their wall. I like the idea, but I don't think it would do a whole lot. First, there would be some constitutional issues with regards to the 27th Amendment. I think you could phrase it so that you can comply with the 27th Amendment, but there would certainly be court challenges that you would have to spend time and energy fighting. Beyond that, though, senators, representatives, and presidents aren't really dependent on their salaries. The majority of them are either independently wealthy or make a ton of money off capital gains, i.e. investments. I don't think holding their salary would change their standard of living in the slightest. In fact, it could lead to more corruption. The people in Congress, who are totally reliant on their salaries, would suffer while those who take in money from lobbying and other sources would weather the storm. In other words, it would hurt the people most likely to sympathize with the workers, while not hurting those less likely to sympathize. It could also encourage congressmen to have external sources of income. Government shuts down, they all get fired. See if that motivates them to work together. I'd be more in favor of holding an impromptu election like other countries do. If a Congress can't work together to keep the govs open at a minimum, why not revote? And whoever the public decides is the problem gets thrown out. Here's the thing, I only think it would work if you eliminated income from all sources, that is investments and outside revenue streams. Basically you'd have to put a freeze on the bank accounts of the politicians during a shutdown, and you'd never have one again. At least half of our members of Congress have such wherewithal that their congressional salary is meaningless to them. The cost of voting to shut down the government should be the calling of new elections. No. Corrupt politicians would have advantage over honest ones. Honest ones might find it easier to get money illegitimately than to solve the shutdown problem, which corrupt politicians would love. The president has gone without pay since the beginning of his presidency. It'll do more damage than good. Imagine if they give Trump his $5 wall because they wanted to get paid. I would rather we just do away with the debt ceiling bullshit and not allow Congress and the president to use these continuing resolutions to hold the government employees, services, etc. hostage. It's a ridiculously stupid policy and serves as nothing more than a manipulation and bargaining strategy. Do your negotiating and bargaining while drafting the budget and then stick with it until the following fiscal year. Procedures can be put in place for emergency funding of unexpected events such as extreme natural disasters. Absolutely not. As others have said, the problem with anything that punishes senators financially is that it encourages wealthy people to get involved in politics and discourages less wealthy ones, or leaves them dependent on wealthy patrons, which is even worse. Instead, when the government fails to pass a budget, everything should continue at previous levels, maybe even automatically increasing for inflation. This is not ideal, but defaulting to the status quo is far superior to having everything grind to a halt. People who want to implement changes should have to get support for them, and shouldn't be able to use shutting down the government as a cudgel to try and force them through. Like and subscribe for good luck, you handsome gentlemen.